Welcome to AppSec Unlocked. I'm your host, Edwin Kwan. In last episode, we discussed building a security culture. Today, we're getting hands-on with one of the most effective ways to improve security: secure coding bootcamps. Because, let's face it, developers learn best by doing, not by watching. And if you want secure code, you need to make secure coding practical, engaging, and relevant. Traditional security training often fails because it's too theoretical. You've done training where you watch a video, check a few boxes, but do you really remember? It's not the same with bootcamps. Bootcamps are different, and here's why. They have an immersive learning environment. You're in there, it's hands-on, on the tools, and you're usually dealing with real-world scenarios. As you're making a change in there, you're getting that immediate feedback. And because it's a bootcamp, there are some peer learning opportunities. I recently spoke with a development team lead who said something interesting. She said, after 2 days of bootcamp, my team caught more security issues than they had in the previous 6 months of regular training. Imagine that. Now, let's break down how to make this happen for your team. So how do you design your bootcamp? First, we'll start with the structure. Here's the best way to do it. There is some pre-work that needs to be done prior to the bootcamp. You need to do a skills assessment to understand where everyone is at. If you don't do that, your bootcamp might be too simplistic for your audience, or it might be just over the top for them. Also, because it's hands-on, you need to do an environment setup. Make sure that everything is done properly, or at least create a guide, a step-by-step guide for how to create the environment for doing it. And as part of that, make sure the correct tools are installed. It's the worst thing to do going into a bootcamp where the compiler for the language that you're teaching is not installed and the attendees cannot run or build the code. The next thing to look at is the bootcamp flow. Usually, the best way to do things is to run through the concept introductions in the morning, and then you can use the mid-morning to do the guided exercises. The afternoon is when you can cover the challenge labs, and you can end the day by doing a little bit of team competition. And once the bootcamp is done, there needs to be some follow-through. There should be some take-home challenges to kind of reinforce what was covered at the bootcamp. Reference materials that the team can refer to should they encounter a scenario where they need those information. And you also need to provide ongoing support and perhaps follow-up sessions. So let's get specific about the kind of exercises that should be in there. So here's what I know works. It starts off with some really good vulnerability labs, covering technical things like SQL injection scenarios, XSS challenge labs, CSRF attack simulations, or authorization bypass exercises. These are all very common vulnerabilities which would be useful to have in your bootcamp. You should also have some secure coding exercises covering things like input validation patterns, secure authentication flows, safe API design, and secure data handling. This is important because you don't want to just cover the vulnerabilities. You also want to cover what it takes to secure those vulnerabilities. And the last thing that you need to have are code review workshops. These are real vulnerabilities examples, so that they can do pattern recognition and they can fix the validation. Or even They could also use a security tool, one that is being used within your organization. One thing that's really important about this is that every exercise should match your team's tech stack. No generic examples. I made a mistake early in my career when I was trying to run a bootcamp, and this with Java developers, and I was using OWASP web code. For those not familiar with OWASP web code, it's PHP. The teams were a little bit disengaged, and I got the feedback from them saying, we don't need to worry about these languages because the examples you gave me was for a different programming language, one that they felt was less secure than the one that they were using. So it's very important to make sure you match your exercises with your team's tech stack. Now, setting up the right environment is also crucial. Make sure you have your checklist. You need to work out your development environments. There might be some pre-configured VMs that you want them to use, some Docker containers, maybe even the cloud environments, and even having some local setup scripts to make things easier. And security tooling, it's good to kind of use the ones that you're already using within your organization, such as your static analysis tools, your dynamic scanners, any interactive security testing tools, and any code review platforms in there. And for the friendly competition, you might need a CTF platform, a challenge platform where they're able to access those vulnerable applications, you're able to test the environments, and there's also a scoring system. This makes it a lot more fun and engaging for the teams that are involved. Just make sure you get all those right, because you don't want to set up something that eats into training time. I've been to events where the first 1.5 hours of the day is spent setting up. That is not the best use of everyone's time. So, measuring success. How do you know if your bootcamp is working? Some things to look out for. You've got your immediate indicators. You got your challenge completion rates, how quickly teams are completing them. You got your exercise success rates, the team engagement levels, and your knowledge check scores. These are immediate indicators to tell you just how well that bootcamp is going. But you also got your more important long-term metrics. And these are things like security bug reduction, the code review quality, adoption in security tools, and people being proactive with security. And as I mentioned, the real test comes weeks after the bootcamp, where the developers get to apply what they've learned. So here are some key takeaways for running successful bootcamps. Make sure you match your exercises to your tech stack. Focus on hands-on learning. Make sure you build in immediate feedback. It's good to have some sort of competitive element like a CTF at the end. Ensure you have post-bootcamp support. And the last one is make sure you measure the long-term impact. That's all for now. In the next episode, we'll have a guest speaker in, and we're going to explore how to communicate security to executives and board members. But for now, I'd love to hear about your secure coding bootcamp experiences. This is AppSec Unlocked. I'm Edwin Kwan. Thanks for listening.